Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm Exhibitions, where we're currently watching a King of the Hill for 2 hours here, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern. Of course, Mondays and Fridays we're having our King of the Hills. Of course, the other days we have other festivities going on, but again, every day at 5 p.m. Eastern. My name is axeltoss. I am joined by axslav. We've seen some pretty interesting games so far. The first game, interestingly enough, was pretty much Wings of Liberty strategy for the most part. And in the second game, we saw a little bit of a deviation from the norm. QXE saying, all right, let's try some fun stuff. Went for some proxy Rax Reapers, but didn't work out too well for him.
It didn't really. I mean, the thing with most fun strategies is to make one of those like new strategies work, you have to spend time to really figure out the purpose of every single structure, the timings of everything. And I don't think QXE had quite put that amount of thought into it. He's like, I'm just going to proxy Reapers and see what happens. And
I'm okay with that.
I mean, no, it's fun to watch, but it kind of explains why he lost that one, I think.
Yeah,
you know, it wasn't as thought out of a build where TT1's counter to it was so well thought out.
Yeah, and you can, like, when you're talking about timings, like, when you scout, like, we saw TT1 scout right after Pylon. That's what he did, right? It felt like...
He did.
Yeah, and I feel like Protosses have to kind of do that now, because there's always going to be that threat of that Proxy Reaper, and that's the difference between chrono boosting and not chrono boosting out that first Stalker, and that's what TT1 had to do. If he didn't do that, he potentially could have lost a Zealot, or some Pros.
It definitely could have gone worse for him. Looks like now we're going to have Sasquatch as our new challenger versus TT1. A very skilled Zerg player. We've seen him in some of the MLG events in the past.
Yep.
In fact, we've even seen him in the Heart of the Swarm show matches in the past, known for 7 pulling people out of free-for-alls. Nanual got a little frustrated at him about that last week, and this week I think it was QXE was on the receiving end of his famed 7-pull. But in a 1-versus-1 situation, I don't know if he's going to utilize that strategy to the same extent as he did in free-for-all.
We'll see. I mean, another story behind this is, what team is Sasquatch on?
It's on Complexity.
Who just lost?
Oh, it's another revenge story.
It's another revenge match.
We're having
here.
a Root versus Complexity
You'd think
show-off
it's planned
here.
or something. No. Yeah, we'll have to see if Sasquatch can take revenge for his QXE buddy. But TT1 showed very strong play in the last game. I love his reaction to the Proxy Reaper, getting the STARCRAFT early, and then immediately throwing down 2 additional gateways and throwing down those pylons across the map. Because when your opponent invests that much into those Reapers, they're not going to have much to defend, especially when they proxy that first barracks. But here we are in game number 3 of the day. Sasquatch going over what happened so far. Of course, QXE taking out Cats first, TT1 taking out QXE, and now Sasquatch going up against TT1. Sasquatch is your blue Zerg player in the top right-hand location of Daybreak. His opponent in the bottom left, the defending king, if you will, the red Protoss player, TT1. And we have a Wings of Liberty map. And in Game 1, we had a Wings of Liberty map. Game 1, we saw Wings of Liberty strat. Game 2, we saw a Heart of the Swarm map. Actually, those maps are now in Wings of Liberty, so I don't know if that's still applicable, but you get what I'm saying.
I do. I feel like TT1 is actually going to rack up a couple kills here.
Ooh.
TT1 is an insanely solid player. A lot of people have kind of forgotten how good he is because he kind of went inactive over the last few months of the Wings of Liberty. But I think Heart of the Swarm has brought back some activity in him, and you know, we actually saw his analytical commentary yesterday on that show match, and he really knew a lot about Heart of the Swarm. He's put in a lot of time into Heart of the Swarm, and he really knows, I think, how to play to it without just like throwing everything into one crazy strat. He knows the purpose of each of these units and how to integrate them in the right amount of way. You know, when he wants to make like oracles, he's not just going to say, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of oracles and see how it works. He's going to have a plan, like, okay, I want 3 oracles if I'm doing this build. If I'm doing this other build, I need gas a little faster, so maybe only build 1 or 2 just to scout or something. You know, like, every single part is all really well thought out and how they integrate in with the rest of his plan. So, I'm really excited to see what he has in store for us.
Yeah, it was absolute pleasure casting Dragon versus White Raw yesterday with TT1. It went to... I'm not going to spoil it. Guys, the VOD should be available. It was a best of 7 between White Raw and Dragon. You can probably find it at MajorLeagueGaming.com.
MLG.tv.
MLG.tv.
Yeah, straight to the VOD page.
Go check that out. It was a fantastic series between the 2 players. And now we see early on TT1 going for the very early pylon block at his opponent's natural expansion. Not necessarily a standard thing in Wings of Liberty. What do you make of that decision?
It's kind of give or take. I think this shows that TT1 really hadn't been playing Wings of Liberty for the last couple months because this used to be standard. back when he was very active. And actually, I mean, I still do it because I'm kind of lazy. But now, like at the very top level of ProDOS now, in Wings of Liberty, if you watch Pro League, the pylon block is pretty rare. It's more common as you just run to probe around in circles and you delay as long as you can using that method. And you save the 100 minerals to accelerate your own build. But I don't think there's anything. I mean, even if the pros had decided the pylon block isn't quite as efficient, it's by such a small margin that it's not a really significant factor.
And it's interesting because, you know, some ProDOS players, at least in Wings of Liberty, as 2 links sneak on by, you know, basically just don't send a probe across the map in favor of getting as fast of an expansion down as possible, maximizing their economy. But TT1 electing just to send that probe across the map to make that pylon. Now 2 links sneaking by here into TT1's main base. That's going to be a little bit annoying. Not going to be game-ending by any means. Of course, for me, it probably would, because I'm terrible at dealing with these early links, but...
And, you know, Sasquatch, we talk about how his fondness for early pulls. He is very, very good at controlling Zerglings in an opponent's face, because he's been in this situation so many times before. That
being said, actually losing a significant amount of HP on one of those Zerglings down to 6 HP. Of course, we've seen Sasquatch in plenty of our more elaborated activities as far as free-for-alls and 2v2v2v2 that we do here at MLG in our Heart of the Swarm exhibition days. But they're going to remain alive. Behind this, we have 3 fast bases taken here from Sasquatch. No gas just yet. Very standard indeed, and nothing too surprising happening. Meanwhile, TT1 with very standard timings as well, so nothing to imply this isn't Wings of Liberty thus far.
I like the way TT1's making that wall off. Very, very easy to defend against baning attacks, and it's natural. One thing I was a little bit worried about when he first opened up is the position he placed his first pylon meant that he would have a really hard time creating a nice wall in with his buildings. And so he had to put this vulnerable wall in where you kind of leave your worker line open, you don't actually make a full wall in. And this is so it's better versus early pools, because you can wall off really fast with just a forge and then a cannon and one other building. And then the Zerglings have to walk around the nexus before they can hit the cannon. So it's very good against early pools, but it is a lot weaker against other type of wall-ins. So I like to see the way he's compensating for that by placing these other buildings to kind of reinforce this area.
And also, like, once that Mothership Core pops out, that represents so much more ability to defend against a potential attack. Of course, the Photon Overcharge ability, with the fact that anything that's attacking early can't shoot up from a Zerg generally. And the Mothership Core can do damage there. Yeah, so... you know, that's going to help a lot. I mean, a lot of ProDOS is feeling very safe in Heart of the Storm, even taking like ridiculously fast thirds due to that safeness. But also something I want to point out really quick. Sasquatch chose this map. The Challenger always chooses the map here. So what do you make of his choice of Daybreak? I mean, obviously that's the map of choice in Wings of Liberty. Is that going to stay consistent into Heart of the Swarm?
It might be, you know. I mean, Broodlords haven't really been touched at all. Infestors have been messed around with a bit, but they're still very, very, very good. We could see Sasquatch go for that same strategy. Of course, the thing, if you're going for the late game Broodlord Infestor strategy, you've got to be really careful about is Tempest. So will Sasquatch find a solution to the Tempest? Maybe integrating some Vipers in his play, or perhaps actually not even going for that Broodlord Infestor strategy. It's hard to tell, but if you pick Daybreak, it's likely he had a late game in mind, and as I'm saying this, he's building a whole bunch of roaches, so perhaps not.
Well, whenever the Mothership Core is on your side of the map and 3 Stalkers on the Zealot, you gotta be a little bit wary of that, even making 11 drones there. So 3 roaches there from Sasquatch might not be enough units, to be completely honest. No static D here. Gonna try to get some damage done with slow links. Keep in mind, speed is not yet done, but wow, TT1 actually doing a significant amount of aggression here.
Now, the one thing TT1 might be missing is the Mothership no longer has that Revelation ability, so he cannot pick at these creep timbers. And fighting on creep, when you're using units that you have to kite with, like Stalkers, it's so much more difficult.
Oh, he's going to just run right up into the main base. Keep in mind, he has Time Warp available, also has the recall ability. So while you at home may be thinking, oh, all of his units are dead, why would he do something like this? Well, at any moment in time, this Mothership Core can just recall back to Nexus.
Sasquatch has been using the drones to fight, and he took a significant amount of drone losses there. I would call that a TT1 success.
I would agree 155.3% with you. Yeah, and, you know, there's a number of utilities that push had. First, obviously did damage, killed some drones, killed some units. Second, forced a lot of units out of Sasquatch, like forced to make units not able to make as many drones. That being said, though, he already got up to 58, so not really where he wants to be, but it's not like he's only at 40 harvesters or something. So I don't think that push was game-ending by any means, and you'll also have to consider the you also have to consider the investment placed into those stalkers. Those weren't sentries, so ideally you make those sentries a little bit earlier on so they can start accumulating that energy. But then again, this is Heart of the Swarm, so it's like the Mothership Core has a time warp, so it's like how much does that negate the sentry force field? So do you really need that much energy from force field? So there's a lot of stuff to think about at this point, but me personally, I don't think this game is significantly in any of these players' advantage at this point.
We can see Sasquatch has banked up a ton of gas. That's all going to be utilized on Mutinous. And TT1, meanwhile, is building a very powerful ground army. Sentries, Stalkers, Immortals, taking a third base. But there's no blink in sight.
Nope.
And he's seen nothing but roaches, right? And so he's been tailoring his army to beat roaches, but Sasquatch is already switching over to Mutinous.
Yeah, and that's like the perfect thing to do against a Mothership Core too. Of course, it's going to be very vulnerable to Mutilisks. Very easy to snipe that off with those mutas as well. Now, sentries aren't terrible against mutas, but it's not like he has a ridiculous amount of them. Only about 6 or 7. He can maybe hallucinate like 4 Phoenix to scare his opponent, but you know, Sasquatch isn't going to fall for that. So we're going to have to see how this goes. More sentries being added on here. Is this going to be enough to deal with that Mutalisk army?
He's got a ton of Guardian Shields. The point made about hallucination is interesting. I wonder if it's be good to use it now, or if he should just focus all his energy on Force Fields and Guardian Shields, as of course, there still is a substantial Zerg ground army that he's got to use Force Fields against.
This might have been a fake third Nexus, or he had to cancel it, because he did add a bunch more gateways. He's up to like 7 or 8 at this point in time. The Nexus is not getting up. Here comes the engagement. Muta's coming forward. Lings and Roaches trying to engage into TT1's Deathfall army, but look at this. Look at how many Stalkers he added on once he realized the Mutas were in play, and now Sasquatch is left wondering, what the heck do I do? Doesn't have any further tech on the field as far as infestors, as far as Banelings just yet. Has the Baneling Nest, but no Banelings in production. There goes a Time Warp from that Mothership Core, very nicely placed. You see the Lings getting slowed down as they pass through it, and I don't know what can stop this army. Sasquatch pulling absolutely everything to try to deal damage to TT1 here to try to keep himself alive in this game, targeting down the Stalkers with those mutas, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough.
I don't think it is. TT1 just has too many units. Sasquatch needed to make a lot of Spine Cores against a 2-base push when he's producing units.
Wow, every single drone here being pulled from Sasquatch. TT1 able to spot the mutas and react appropriately. A lot of this went into that fake-ish third, as Sasquatch might clean this up, but as far as units lost, 52 workers killed.
I mean,
59 to 23.
This is the point where TT1 can warp in units faster than Sasquatch can replace them. So that game was decided there, and I think it came down to, like you said, that fakish third.
Yes.
Sasquatch thought TT1 was playing macro, and he didn't take the time to react to the push. As TT1 was moving across the map, he needed to be massing Spine Cores at one of his bases,
right,
and then just launch a counterattack.
Yeah.
And of course, then he'd win the game easily. But he just didn't really, he got fully bought into that fake third that TT1 did, and he didn't realize the push was a very committed push.
Yeah, it was pretty nice play there from TT1. I like the incorporation of the Mothership Core early. I feel like that little semi-push, that tiny push that went into the main base.
That was fun.
I feel like that did a decent amount. I mean, again, able to prevent your opponent from getting drones, which is a huge part of PvZ. You want to prevent your opponent from getting crazy on that economy, crazy on that drone count, because once they get up to that 80, 79, 70, like in that area of drones, it's very hard to be able to deal with the armies they're able to produce, especially when your tech isn't that far along. I mean, he was only on Immortals and Stalkers. Like, imagine if you know, infestors were on the field or something like that. So a lot of stuff went into that game. Very interesting game indeed. And TT1 is now on a 2-game winning streak. We'll have to see who his challenger is. Coming up next, it's going to be game 4 of the day. And we'll have to see if TT1 can extend his win streak to 3. You're watching MLG Heart of the Swarm Exhibitions King of the Hill. Don't go anywhere.